The amygdala then has reacted with the panic attack before you know it. However, we know that hypnosis can do, and hypnotic states can do something called critical factor bypass. Sounds like a really dodgy operation, doesn't it? It's not.
Or one of those software updates they send you for security.
One of those software updates.
We need to do an update and restart the computer.
So what we can do, even with this ancient software of the limbic system, is that we can, during hypnotic states, which I'm sure you probably know, you've obviously got experience there, is an alpha brainwave state. So our brainwaves slow down between 8 and 15 hertz. And it is at that time that we bypass the critical factor. So if you like, we have the ability with hypnosis to stand back and go, hang on here. So this is what your amygdala, your emotional brain, is reacting to. This is what we know logically and rationally. I'm at a friend's barbecue and everyth's fine. So what happens is that gap between your perceived threat and perceived ability to cope is kind of, if you like, challenged at both sides. And so it's like, of course I can cope here. I'm perfectly safe. I'm perfectly comfortable. There is no threat. It's just that I had learned maybe years ago that there was something triggered in this situation that meant I felt a threat. So we can relearn what we can do. And thinking back of your iPhone idea, and that absolutely, that's a really good one, is, and maybe this is where my technological knowledge stops and ends, but what we can do is change the communication between the apps or between the software, and actually say, hang on, maybe we need to update this, because our neural pathways that have been established even from threat or trauma in the past can always be changed. They send messages to each other, brain cells, that have to jump across what we call a synaptic gap. And that happens throughout the brain. So if cells are no longer firing together, i.e. this really is threat, and this is how we need to respond, i.e. run away very quickly, what will happen is those cells will actually start to join new brain pathways, so that you're no longer reacting with a panic attack in a friend's garden, for example.
And it is
what's not useful can be changed.
Absolutely, and it must be difficult as well, because and this is a stereotype, obviously, but you got a couple, they come in, we want to have children, we're struggling, and it's like, I don't understand it. The person opposite me is the love of my life. That person's the love of my life. We're intimate. We trust each other. There's a level of emotional intelligence between us. We've talked about our issues. We trust each other. And I can't fall pregnant.
Yep. Absolutely.
And then an anxiety would build, because they go and see a doctor, a medical practitioner of some sort, who tells them everything's working. And it doesn't matter how well you word that. It's like, well, everything's working, so the problem must be you.
Yep. 25% of cases of fertility issues are what we call unexplained fertility. So the biggest chance is that they are actually psychological and not physical at all. But think of on the fertility side, and it is very similar when we get into pregnancy and birth and how these systems work there. Our reproductive system and our digestive system, interestingly, are two of the biggest systems in our bodies that take a lot of energy. They take a lot of oxygen and blood supply, etc. But they're also the ones that aren't directly involved in our survival. Now, you may say the digestive system, we've got to eat to survive. Well, yeah, but maybe we don't eat this minute. Maybe our subconscious believes that we're in threat, so we need to react. So we'll switch that one off. We'll switch the reproductive system off. Let's not even go down that route. And so stress, and it may not even be stress that's related to fertility, although what you were saying there about you go to investigations, you get more anxious about it, is absolutely true. We say the longer a couple takes to conceive, the less likely they are to conceive. Because of that, because of all the stress buildup. And what I was going to say is as part of that, it can also be about stress about job. It can be, as you say, all the various deadlines in life, and increasing gas and electric bills, and everything creates this response of stress within our system. So if the blood and oxygen supply is taken for everything else, the reproductive system is where it's taken from, or certainly one of those two major systems.
Because this is something that I think people don't understand, is there are essential things your body needs for function. Like you said about food. Now, anybody that knows anything about fasting will know you can very comfortably, if you sort of set yourself up properly, not eat for 10 days. I've done 2 7-day fasts. And once you get past about somewhere between 24 and 36 hours, it doesn't cross your mind to eat. Ever.
Yeah.
And it gets to the point where you have to remind yourself, it's time. Okay, it's been 7 days. You need to have something to eat.
Yeah.
And one of the things I try and explain to people is we massively misunderstand and underestimate how efficient our body is.
Yeah.
We complain about, a little bit of arthritis, grown in knees, grown in joints, a couple of scars I've got from injuries and a few pulled muscles. And that's the point. If I was a car, I'd be a write-off. The body doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
The body is just so efficient at functioning, and it's doing so many things at the same time. And while you're sitting there thinking, well, I don't feel that great, you've just no idea what a great job your body is doing. But one of the things that makes the body so efficient and is its ability to we need resources for something else right now. So, or another way of looking at it is, and I think about when you look at the sort of in the animal kingdom and all the people with conservation who are trying their hardest to keep species alive, and they're like, I don't understand, we've got everything perfect, but that animal, whatever it is, and we are only animals, is like, these are not the perfect conditions for survival.
Yeah.
If the conditions for survival are not perfect, or you subconsciously don't believe it's perfect, your body will switch off its reproduction system because it does not want you. So going back to what we were saying originally is about the operating system, because humans, although not in this current form, but if you go right down to our ancestry, we're 2 million years old. And I think in this format, we're a couple of 100,000 years old, or 500,000 years old or something. But giving birth, raising children, giving birth from when our operating system started was dangerous, incredibly dangerous. It was literally life or death.
Yeah, there were predators around.
Yeah, both for you and the child. And we see that, people will watch a nature program and see some antelope spending half an hour, 2 hours, start to struggle with pregnancy, and lions come along and eat it. They'll see the same with zebras, right? Now that those animals know they have a small window in which to give birth. Otherwise, both them and the child will die.
Yeah.
But humans think that doesn't apply to us.
And it most definitely does. Of course, we're animals as well, and I know that's exactly what you're implying. What's really interesting is if any of your listeners or you have actually have ever worked with horses. Horses, I think, are always a really, really good way of seeing what happens if, a bit like that antelope or zebra that's about to be eaten, to give the best chance of survival for them and for, I'm going to say child here. I know we don't call a zebra a child, but to give birth to their young, is that all animals have got this very, very efficient inbuilt system of being able to slow down or stop the process. Because, of course, giving birth, whilst we're giving birth, does leave us vulnerable to predators, to threats out there. And so we don't want us to be compromised, if you like, if we and again, perceived threat. It's not just the real threat, but it's apparent threat as well. And that could be as much in birth, my goodness, of that you're frightened of hospitals, that you've got a needle phobia. It could be that you don't like your midwife that's just come on shift and you don't feel safe because you haven't built a rapport, or you don't trust their professional advice. It could be anything at all. And so we are within, as animals, we're stopping things. Horses, if they are spooked in any way, they kick in very, very quickly that this is not a safe time and place. And so labor will just stop. Yep. There is a lovely story born out of tragedy, unfortunately, but a lovely human interest story of a woman in the Indonesian tsunami of quite a few years ago now. I don't want to guess, maybe 12 years, maybe more. And she had been one of the lucky ones, if you can call it lucky, of being able to see the waters advance. So she had, it knew they were going to engulf her village. She was a local woman, not a tourist. And she was actually in the advanced stage of labor. So she had enough time, and only enough time, because if any of us have seen any of the pictures or even watched the Ewan McGregor film, that the waters advanced really quickly. She climbed a tree. She climbed to the highest point that she possibly could get to. Sadly, her village was engulfed, and she was stuck in that tree for 3 days. Okay. No rescue, no boats, nobody to come and help. Her body stopped labor, just like horses, just like any animal that feels in threat would do. Now, our body can't hold on forever, because we're also dealing with in birth, the physiological thing of placenta will eventually start to deteriorate. So the system that's sustaining the baby needs to let go of the baby, essentially. So she did start labor with it 3 days later, had her baby in the tree on her own. True story. And luckily, her and her baby, both very healthy, were rescued within a couple of hours of her giving birth. So lucky, most definitely. But again, it shows just how powerful, if we perceive threat, obviously that was real threat. It was right for her brain to instruct her body to act in that way. But that's how powerful it can be.